AskReddit by Valentine Venom. What is the first major news story you remember as a kid? Challenger exploding. My dad let me stay home from school to watch it. I told him they launched fireworks instead, because I, 6 years old, didn't understand what just happened. I was in school and not watching it at the time. Elementary school probably did not have very many TVs with antennas. The principal came on the PA and shared the shuttle blow up. I thought, isn't that what it is supposed to do, and didn't think much of it. After school I learned I was wrong. The Tylenol murders in 1982. I was 6 and I distinctly remember standing in the kitchen in front of my grandparents' refrigerator while this story was on the evening news in their living room. It's so weird how you remember certain details. Every time I have to pry some damn impossibly stuck seal off a bottle I think of Tylenol. The death of Princess Diana. I was 9 at the time. Me too, I was 7 and remember being upset I couldn't watch Ninja Turtles. Columbine. It was weird to be watching it from half a country away on the midday news. I was 7. My mom said a serial killer shot up a school. I later learned the truth. Being a very literal child, I interpreted it as serial killer and said I hoped he didn't get Cheerios. I cringe looking back at that moment, but it's permanently filed away in the Val's most embarrassing memories folder. As fucked up as that is for the situation that was happening, that's so adorable and wholesome. Baby Jessica falling down the well. For the longest time I thought it was whale, like some Jonah shit. That happened in the town I grew up in. I was in JR High at the same private school she graduated from, so I'd see her around. She still had a noticeable scar on her face. 9/11. Same. I was in 4th grade. The Challenger launch. They stopped classes and gathered all of us kids together in school to watch the launch because a teacher was going to space. That shit got awkward real quick. O.J. Simpson Bronco chase. This happened on my birthday, so I remember sitting there eating my strawberry shortcake birthday cake like. The Oklahoma City bombing. I grew up in Tulsa and I was in 2nd grade when it happened. I remember my dad picking me up after school for a dentist appointment. We drove by a local news station building and he told me what happened. This is mine. I was in kindergarten. I remember my teacher weeping in the hallway and she told me a lot of little children had gone to heaven that day. When I asked my parents, they explained it to me. Hurricane Katrina. News for everyone, reality for me. Weird situation. JFK was shot. I was 5/6 yo. This. I sort of remember the 1960 election because I remember 2-year-old me was disappointed that Nixon lost. In my defense, I thought he was one of Santa's reindeer. On Comet, on Cupid, on Donda and Nixon. Columbine. I was in 5th grade and turned on the TV to watch Power Rangers after school, but instead there were live shots of all these big kids walking out of their school with their hands behind their heads. I'd never seen anything like it. I was in 4th grade when Columbine happened. My teacher had us write letters to the victims' parents, from the perspective of the kids. Pretty straightforward assignment at the time. The last week of school she got a couple of handwritten responses from those parents. She read the responses to us in class, and ugly cried the whole way through it. It was jarring at the time, because I still didn't fully grasp the situation and it was the first time I had ever seen anyone cry like that. Mount St. Helens. Had a front row seat for that in Amboy, WA. Cuban Missile Crisis. I am old. Me too. That's also my first. Civil rights movement and Vietnam. My mother would have the radio on in the morning and the announcer would state how many Americans were killed the previous day in Nam. clearly remember black and white footage on the evening news of people in the civil rights movement being fire-hosed. National Guard on college campuses facing off with college students protesting the war. My mom wouldn't allow us to watch the Vietnam War coverage. Too much for little kids, she'd say. Berlin Wall. I had no idea why so many people were excited about tearing down a wall. I was 6. Coronation of Elizabeth II. Wow. Charles and Diana's wedding in 1981. We had blue cupcakes. Hello person about my age. Mine is the eruption of Mt. St. Helens and that we had ash all over our house for a few weeks. German reunification. I was born in the last years of Socialist East Germany. Reagan attempted assassination. Yeah, me too for some reason. I was at the babysitters watching Fantasy Island or Loverboat and the station cut away to the news that the president had been shot. Been trying to find TV listings for that date but haven't found any outside of prime time. Oh, this is a great question. I vividly remember Johnstown. I remember watching the news where they did the famous flyover of the compound and you could see bodies piled everywhere. Pretty sure they showed the footage of the cult members opening fire on Leo Ryan and his entourage too. They would show stuff like that back then. Like when the walkways collapsed at the Hyatt Regency in Kansas City, they showed the rubble and you could see lots of pools of blood and limbs sticking out of the debris. Don't know about back then. We did watch people throw themselves out of windows at the Twin Towers. Challenger. I watched it happen. My whole school did. I was 5. Iran hostage crisis. Same. I was debating between this and John Lennon's murder. John Bennett Ramsey. This was mine as well. I must have been like 4 or 5. I remember standing in line at the grocery store and there was a picture of her on a magazine, looking very pretty and smiling. I couldn't read yet, so I asked my mom who she was and why she was on the cover of a magazine. Was she famous? She was pretty enough to be famous. I remember how my mom winced and hesitated before she told me that someone had done something bad to her, someone hurt her, they were trying to figure out who, and that's why she was on the magazine. It wasn't until many years later that I read about her case. Obama winning the election. I remember my aunt being very excited about it. Mine was Sandy Hook.